Hi, I'm Ellie Braxton Levine, and I'm the president and CEO of the Coppell Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank everyone for joining us for our new Meet the Candidates series, where we bring the different candidates to you for you to get to know them and make informed decisions. With us today, we have, of course, Ricardo Roberto, who is a business owner here in Coppell and part of our Government Affairs Committee. And we are honored to have our state representative, Michelle Beckley, with District 65. She is also up for reelection this year. And we're going to get to know her a little bit. And I'm going to turn it over to Ricardo. Representative Beckley will speak a little bit, and then Ricardo's going to go ask a few questions. There is no editing to this video. And so it will be attached to our website. So if you miss this or you want to go back and hear it again, it will be available to you in a couple of days. So thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Ricardo.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. And thank you, Representative Beckley, for joining us today and sharing our time here at a pretty dynamic point in your campaign. So we are going to start with the Representative Beckley just making an introductory statement, and then our Government Affairs Committee here at the Chamber has come up with some questions. All candidates have been provided questions before we did the interviews. So, but we'll kind of jump around. It should be a little bit different with everyone, just based on everybody's different interests. So please, thank you again, Representative Beckley. Why don't you take the floor?
Sure. So thank you very much, Ricardo and Ellie. I am State Representative Michelle Beckley and currently representing District 65, which has a sliver of Coppell, Carrollton, half of Carrollton, Lewisville, a sliver of Dallas, and half of Highland Village. So it's in Denton County. It's all in Denton County. So basically it's a southeast corner just below the lake. So if you kind of just think below Lake Lewisville, both the landfills are in my district. So yeah, some fun things. I know all about the landfill, but we're not here to talk about that today. It's amazing what you learn when you're running for office. I am a small business owner. I own a Kookaburra bird shop that my mother started in 1979 in Carrollton, and I took over in 2003. I was not happy with how the current situation of politics was in the area. So I actually ran for mayor of Carrollton first. As a Democrat, I mean, I'm a Democrat in case you don't, the donkey didn't clue you in. Sorry. But you know, Texas is flipping, but I look at myself as socially liberal and fiscally moderate. As a small business owner, I'm very much aware of our property taxes that we pay. We own our buildings, so I'm very aware of how all of that intertwines. And going to the state house, I beat the guy that wrote the bathroom bill, and that was just a ridiculous session. And the ridiculousness of all of that is what drove me to run for office. My degree, I went to school in the area from kindergarten to high school. I went to Carrollton Farmers Branch and graduated from Newman Smith in 1988. And then I followed that up with a degree in biomedical science from Texas A&M. So I'm very aware of public education and how that helps Texans. And so getting back to the funding levels that we had in 1988, which is much higher, even though we did quite a bit of good work in the last legislative session, we do need to get to our public education. I strongly believe that a strong education is good for strong businesses. So that's a little bit about my history. Here's a little fun, who knew we would be in a pandemic in 2020? I know, kind of odd, but my industry, I'm in the bird industry, which is very hyper specialized, but birds are very susceptible to airborne diseases. So running a business that was deemed essential during a pandemic, I already had a lot of the things necessary to run that business and keep it open. So I believe I bring a perspective that is going to be very beneficial, especially to small businesses that may not have the access to the resources that the larger businesses have, on how you can run it safely until we get a vaccine or the pandemic runs its course, whatever, however this ends, before we get back to business as usual, we can't do that until we change a little bit of our mindset. But it doesn't have to cost a lot of money, but I do have a lot of knowledge in how to make that work. And so I do it in my business and I use it in my business that's pragmatic. So I take a pragmatic approach to that. And I have that. It's just a weird, who knew that I would be here in this situation, but here I am, and I'm very happy to be here today. And I'm happy to answer any of the questions that the chamber does have. I will point out that in my first legislative cycle, I did have 100% voting record with the North Texas Regional Chamber Coalition. So I'm very proud of my voting record that supports the chambers.
Great. And just kind of continue on that. The first question is, why are you running for this position, and why should voters choose you over your opponent?
So I now have the experience, especially during the pandemic. And we are in a pandemic situation, and we are going to be in a pandemic situation during the start of next session. I have spent the interim getting to know people on different committees, the budget committee, appropriations, and looking at where we are and getting my office prepared for the upcoming session. Knowing that we are going to have unprecedented situations. We don't even know how we're going to operate next session in Austin. And so there is all this preparation that has been going on that I have been fully hands-on participating in. And that gives me a better situation because I will be able to hit the ground running in 2021. That is going to be a crucial legislative session for Texas.
And what issues do you think are most important to our local community and our local business community as you enter the legislature? What are the issues you're going to try and bring to the fore? Get into legislation.
Yeah, so one of my issues as a small business owner, and when I talk about small business owner, I'm going to define that so that, because people have different definitions. For me, it's 50 employees or less. It's the mom and pops, it's the brick and mortar, it's your restaurants and your bars. And we still are going to have situations with that with the pandemic. And I think the legislature needs to find a way to address that. And there are some situations that we can do that to aid the local governments in how they can help their businesses. I think we need to not get in the way of the local government. And so that is one of my I've been a very strong supporter of local control, which has led me to being called vile and heinous by the Speaker of the House in a secret recording, along with a lot of other moderate Republicans. Why he spent so much time talking about me, I honestly had almost no conversations with him during sessions. So for him to go out of his way to make those comments, it must really scare them. That's my only situation with that. As a small business owner, I mean, one of the reasons I got started was finding affordable quality healthcare is really difficult. And I do believe in taking the Medicaid expansion. I'm going to kind of jump ahead to one of your questions there. I do believe we need to take it as Texas. It's financially responsible for us to take it. And having a hospital that almost went bankrupt during this pandemic, if we had had the Medicaid expansion, they would not have been in that position. And that was one of the things my office had to help organize during this pandemic. It's fine now, but we had to reach out and get other offices to work. And
can I just ask you concretely on this? Which hospital? I mean, was this in?
I probably shouldn't, because it wasn't public. It was not. It was more. I don't want to do that to name the hospital.
Right. Okay, and then concretely, so when you're talking about healthcare for businesses, I mean, is there concrete legislation? Are there, what are the specific bills that you're going to try and either present or support? There is specific legislation.
Yeah, so I have my office. So other states have allowed small businesses, and it's not just small businesses, but also the 1099, so the self-employed, they have a hard time getting health insurance as well. So I include them in my legislation. So one of the things that other states who have taken the Medicaid expansion have done is allowed small business owners and self-employed an option of purchasing into the Medicaid as well, if that is another option. So give more competition, give them more options besides just the ACA. And I have worked on that. I started that bill last cycle. It takes many cycles to get bills written where it can be good for Texas. And I have different options of that bill depending on how the legislation goes. You don't know how it's going to go. But we have to take the Medicaid expansion before we can do that. And I do have several bills to hit the ground running and helping small business specifically for that situation. So that's one of the bills that I'm personally working on.
Yeah. Okay. So can you give us a little bit more detail on those? What sort of bills are they? You're talking, a whole basket.
Yeah, like so
we don't have time in a Texas session.
Yeah, we don't have to. We can't do anything with those bills until the Medicaid expansion is taken. So we have to wait. That's like the step one. So I'm following up with like a step 2 or 3. So how those come out, but it would be the businesses could purchase into Medicaid individually. And other states are allowing that, have started with those bills as well. And I'm going to have to go back and look to see if they've actually gone through, because everybody's kind of working on other options. And for me, without barring a federal option, this is just another option that we can as a state present. So we're still working. There's a lot of that was like at the base level. And you have to remember that most of these bills are going to take multiple sessions to get through. And so how they end up, I don't want to say how they're going to end up because we never know. Depends on who helps you. And I'm willing to work however which way we need to do that. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And then, obviously, healthcare is such a big issue because of the costs.
Yeah.
So we know that the Texas budget is expected to be a real challenge. I know that you don't have the real numbers yet for how we're going to pay for things, but how will you prioritize spending on transportation, education, healthcare?
Yeah.
Given that we anticipate a relatively large shortfall.
Yeah, so right now the shortfall, so we have a shortfall that we already have in this current budget. And I don't know if people are aware that we actually are currently have a projected shortfall because our budgets are based on projections. And with the pandemic, though it seems to be shrinking, let's hope, fingers crossed on that. I think it was, I don't have the number written in front of me. So I think it was 4.6 billion, 4.9 billion, can't remember which number, shortfall right now. That's on the current budget. So the one that we're in right now. And we may, we're going to have to really look at that rainy day fund, but that rainy day fund is not going to be enough for a pandemic. That is the reality. And unless businesses start getting, we're going to have to see where we are, because Glenn Hager, the comptroller, has not released newer numbers. But I am very much aware with the appropriations committee and have communications with them on a regular basis on how things are shaping up. But part of the issue that we have in the pandemic is a lot of committees are not meeting because they can't. And so there's a lot going on right now. Even right now, we would normally be doing stuff in the interim that we can't do.
But when you say that the rainy day fund is not enough for pandemic, are you talking about it's not enough to provide healthcare, or it's not enough to provide for new initiatives for business? How are you looking at that bucket of money and the shortfall?
Yeah.
And trying to determine, okay, well, where are we going to put this if we can even get to it, right? Because it's I know that there's always this
there's always that issue. Yeah.
Can we take that money or not? And this would seem to be a rainy day to most of us. But how do you view that in terms of, well, what would be our first priority? Is it healthcare? Is it supporting business? What is it?
So the way we have it now, we have the shortfall. So we're going to have to address that shortfall in the current budget. So that will be the first thing that has to go. That's just the way it's set up. We'll have to address the shortfall no matter what that is. That doesn't leave a whole lot. We have a rainy day fund, but I don't know how much money is going to be left over for it to get into the next session. So I think, though, we have to look at HB3 was not funded because the Republicans turned it into the Senate turned it into a pseudo tax bill. What it was presented with in the House is not how it ended up. So it was supposed to be a full-on education bill. Their property tax bill was not working. And so they turned the education bill into a pseudo property tax bill, which really did not, I mean, most homeowners probably did not see a reduction in their property taxes because it didn't really reduce property taxes to any significant extent to an individual. You probably, if you took your bill, did not see, I saw no result. Mine did, yeah, see? And I think that for me,
usually my property tax bill goes up.
yeah, mine did as well. Mine did as well. So, you know, their responses, it didn't go up as much, but when you look at I can't remember the dollar amount. It was not a significant amount for the average homeowner. It's not, you know, I don't have those numbers in front of me right now, so I don't want to quote them. But, you know, I had worked with if we had done a double our homestead exemption, that would have helped more homeowners versus than what we ended up with. And I'm looking at the homeowner more than the bigger businesses, is because I feel like the homeowners are getting crushed, especially with our property values going up so much. And they don't have.
So I guess, you know, just trying to get, again, a little bit more specificity. So it sounds like what you're saying is we got to cover the shortfall. We got the rainy day fund. You're looking at some kind of relief for property owners. And then what about the other priorities you have?
So education, I mean, you know, public education's going to be up there, and that's about 60% of our budget. So that's probably that there may not even be enough in the rainy day fund for that. That's when you look at, it's going to depend on how everything goes. There is a lot up in the air right now. And unfortunately, I can't give you concrete answers because we don't have the numbers. And so I'm not your normal politician. I'm not going to make just fake, well, not by anything. And so I won't just give you a fake answer, but I will always be available to give you the answer if you ask. My office is very busy. We keep it busy. We're proactive. One of the things we did during the pandemic in my district, I called all the banks that I could get who was giving out the PPP loans. Then I proactively sent out letters to the small businesses. Here's the letter of the banks that are giving it out. So please apply soon because the funds are going to run out. Do I know if anybody did it or not? I don't know, but I did go to that level of that's what we did. And then we spent a lot of time on the Texas Workforce Commission. And the reality that we have in Texas is this pandemic has shown that our computer infrastructure on Texas Workforce Commission, dishes, child protective services we are so far behind in upgrading. We haven't spent the resources in that infrastructure. And we are going to have to look at that, really, really look at that, because a state as wealthy as Texas should not be 3 or 4 upgrades behind the CDC. And that's why we couldn't get our data up to where it was. And we can't deal with a pandemic with bad data, which is what we have seen. And that's the end result. And I think we need to be proactive in correcting those issues.
Okay, and you know, I think the pandemic is something that is hitting all of us. And you know, there's this hope and anticipation that the legislature will be approaching things in a more bipartisan fashion now. How do you feel about that? And how do you feel that you can be effective if there are big issues like this bringing people together?
So being an Aggie, let me just give you a heads up. There's not a lot of Democratic Aggies. So I'm a member of the Aggie caucus. So I've already worked with many of them. I worked with Representative Capriglione on bills that so I've already, if you go look at what I did last session, I already do work with other legislatures. For me, I think we need to stop wasting our time with bills that are just either killing a dead horse or just ridiculous. And they do, and that bothers me, from a legislative point of view, is that some of these we have so many just critical issues. Some of these politically driven social issues need to really be put on the back burner. And we need to address the main issues that are going on in Texas. And that has been a frustration of me as a politician. That's been all of 2 years. So navigating that and coming, I come from a split household. My dad's a Trump voter. So it's not like I'm this, I can understand both sides. I talk to both sides on a daily basis. Sometimes more than I want to, I'm not gonna lie.
Most of us feel everything is
Yeah.
politicized.
Even
In
within
the
my
in the middle of a political interview, I have to say.
yeah. So
But, you know, we worry a lot here about local control issues. You know, it impacts property tax, it impacts our educational system, and you know, just we worry about a lot about local control. And so, you know, which elected officials do you trust most, local, state, or federal, to know the needs of our community?
so I'm local. Your city council members and your mayors definitely, and also your school board trustees. I mean, we have elections for those positions for a reason, and you know, if people aren't happy with how their cities are, there's an election process to deal with that. And I believe that I don't understand how this came about. I feel like there is an attack on local control, and I think we've seen it very widely during the pandemic, and I don't understand it. So I'm not even going to pretend like I understand it. I grew up in a Texas where the Republicans actually supported local control. So now this flip flop is really kind of confusing. It is a little confusing to me at the moment, but I'm a strong supporter of let the local governments who deal with the people on a day-to-day basis make those decisions.
And okay, so you just told me you don't really understand, but do you have any take on, you know, what this animosity is, what creates this particular conflict? Since, you know, our view looking towards the state capital or towards the national capital, I mean,
I don't know where I think it started way before I got involved, and so I don't know how it evolved. I have not had time to sit down and figure out where it evolved from. I can deal with what's now, and what's now, and especially the state as big as Texas. I don't think the city, you know, legislators in Austin should be I mean, certain things should be definitely state. Like if you're texting and you're driving along, anything that's like going along, that's a state thing, because you're going along. I don't know where, I don't know where my city lines are. Everything blurs together, right? Like everything blurs. I mean, I kind of know where they are because I live here, but you know, you're driving along. There's parts of my district, you can be in and out of cities and not even know it. You can be in and out of counties. I sit on the corner of Dallas, Coppell, and I'm in Denton County. I'm sorry, not Collin County. So I'm like, what? I didn't get my words right. So, but I'll sit on the corner, and so you have to deal with all of those different moving parts in all the counties differently. So I think that, you know, each city has its own priority, and you move to that city because of those priorities. And so it's up to their mayor, city council. Most of my cities are city manager priority. You know, I'm totally losing what they're calling those ones, but mostly the city manager does most of the day-to-day work. So they're but you let them decide and let them correct it. And I believe in that process.
and you know, in terms of those sorts of issues, you have, like you said, just a tiny sliver of Coppell in your district. And you know, what's sort of your message, or what are the issues that you see that sort of bind you to this community, or things that you think that we should be focusing on, and where it makes sense for us to start calling you, talking to you about the issues?
Sure. So Mayor Hunt, I have worked with her on multiple issues. Coppell has an issue with the sales tax collection right now. Right. And we are currently, so my office is currently working with that. And I do side with the city of Coppell. So, you know, but how do you navigate that? I'm a member of the minority party. So, but you still can talk to different people and navigate that. One of the bills that I carried was sales price disclosure, and that was the city council and your, Mayor Hunt came down to help speak with that as well. She supports that initiative that I took as well, making it easier for cities to tax the businesses that they had. That's what the end result of that bill. And that is a Republican bill that came out of Rick Perry's interim. That is not a Democratic bill. So it's just a moderate, common sense bill that most other states, especially states that are property tax heavy, have already implemented.
And in terms of, again, trying to resolve our larger issues,
Yeah.
other than our mayor and city council, do you see any kind of coalitions being formed by people in surrounding communities to deal with issues? And who are those people, and what are the issues that really kind of bind us, say with Carrollton and Lewisville, heading north, southwest?
I haven't seen that as much, but I think that, that definitely could be an evolution of things. Carrollton, Farmers Branch, Addison, I'm not sure if Coppell's in there, but they have their 911 and their police and fire. I don't think Coppell's are they? No, they're not. But they've made a regional. So we're seeing regional cities form regional organizations that is more cost effective for the cities on certain things. So I think we are seeing that regionalization happening, especially as the blending of the cities start happening. And that's up to that's up to the cities decide if they want to do that. I think it's been beneficial too. I live in Carrollton, so I ran for mayor of Carrollton, so I know that city more.
Okay, I've got one that I think at this point might seem a little disjointed, but it is local control and how we talk to the legislature. And it's just, do you believe that city and school districts should have paid advocates in Austin during the sessions? Are those things that are helpful?
Yeah.
Are they negative? How do you view that?
So, some of my cities have them and some of them don't. And so we'll use everybody wants to make it lobbyists as like a bad thing, but it's part of the process and making sure watching those bills. The way that bill came across, even a city manager couldn't go. The city couldn't send their city manager with the funds if they wanted to. So that bill I was against that bill. So I think if the cities or school boards want to advocate for themselves, and that's their decision to make with their funds. That's their funds.
Where do you think that comes from? This attempt to limit the voice of local communities, and who are the people that you see as being the right people to influence these sorts of things? Is it the House, the Senate, state government, local communities? How should people work together? What are the levers of government if something emerges and we want to figure out a way to resolve it, sitting where we're sitting?
Yeah. So, we get email. People can send. The emails work, especially instead of the bot email. People write an email that's just my staff. We respond to every single email that we get in as but we can tell if we get a bot one that's just the same thing over and over. If somebody really believes in something and they call the office, especially now, like right now, we're not getting tons of calls. So if people, I know it's calmed down after the pandemic, but I will meet on the phone, like we're doing Zoom. I try to make on the phone because sometimes Zooms every day can get kind of a little hard. So if we can go back to the phone, depending, if people insist on a Zoom, I'll do it. But I do tend to just pick up the phone. I'm 50, so I'll just pick up the phone and talk to you. But I try to schedule that every week. I have constituent calls where I talk to people and I listen to them and write them. There's been some interesting things. The massage therapist, government official lives in my district, and he would like me to change some wording on some of the massage legislation, and we had a very big talk about that. So that may be something that gets added to my agenda, since he is, especially if you're in my district, I'm here to represent you, and so you do get to put at the top of the list if you live in my district, just because that's the first. I have to prioritize, or I won't be able to meet everybody. So yeah. I still talk to people who aren't in the district, but yeah.
And then, so specific issues you want us to talk to you, but are you talking to other local legislators about this whole dynamic of what is the role of local communities? how are they supposed to be talking to the state government? Because, again, where does this
So I think you need to
state
look at where your
local
legislator.
conflict come from? This, hey, you guys can't send lobbyists because I'm not sure what reason. I mean, how do you see the dynamic of that playing out? I mean, is that just specific people at the
Yeah.
senior government positions? I mean, and how are our local legislators responding to that?
So, I mean, that's a very partisan issue, unfortunately. So I think you need to look at where I think that was HB Senate Bill 29 is where you need to look at how people are voting. And if people need to know how to get there, if you either go to my website, send it to my state office, and we can get you out. You can look up all the different bills and follow them. The more eyes that are following the bills as they come up in session, because certain people will have, different issues going on, and then reaching out. We can't see, we vote on thousands of bills. And so the more input I have, especially from the local community, they're going to be put on if my local community comes to me and talks to me and brings it to my attention, I'm obviously going to see it. So the more involved you are, the better the government can be. That's how it should work. So the more eyes on bills I think the more eyes is always better.
And are you forming coalitions with local
So,
people, or is it broader in terms of dealing with issues?
yeah, so you form coalitions within your caucus, and then there's the Aggie caucus, and there's different things depending on what you're focused on. I focus on small business issues as much as I can. So I go work with I try to find the other legislators that have small businesses, because I feel like we know, like if we're paying sales tax and property tax and income taxes we're paying into the TWC, then we bring that perspective to our legislation. And so we do reach out no matter who they are to those people. And so I think right now we are in a flux. I think kind of before we got on here, we were talking about how Texas is turning, and there's a lot of how's this election going to come out. Definitely, I was as one of the 12 Democrats that flipped a seat, and I was the surprise of 2018. I'm a unique candidate in that I did not have traditional support. I was outspent 10-1. So what you see on my website is what I'm doing. I'm not afraid of how much money is used against me in a campaign. So therefore, I think I bring it. I'm in a unique representative, and there's very few of us that got to the state house in the way I did, especially flipping a seat. And I think that you have to. It wasn't like some magical thing that happened. It was just that I worked hard. This district wanted change. I think Texas wants change. And I think that the same old is going to result in the same high property taxes, the underfunded schools, the underfunded infrastructure. And I think that if you want change, you've got to vote for change. And they did in 2018. And it's looking like they're going to in 2020.
Well, Representative Beckley, we are almost out of time. Is there something you'd like to say before we conclude?
No, I'm just, thank you very much for reaching out. And I am a very, accessible legislator. Today yesterday I was in a tie-dye shirt and jeans. Today I'm a little looking like I have a bird store. So, I am very accessible. I'm a retail business. So I talk to everybody. So, I
will admit this is the first time I've put on a suit since the pandemic, but
yeah, we don't know if you've got you could be in your yoga pants. I don't know.
Pants, real pants.
Okay,
anyway,
it's a joke.
We'd just really like to thank you for this time. It's really been a real pleasure. Everyone needs to remember, vote. It is your civic responsibility and such a privilege to vote for the people that you want. Early voting starts on October 13th. We would ask that you go to www.capeltx.gov, and you can find where to vote in Capel, all the different places to vote, and times and schedules. So take a look at that. Make sure you vote. And as a person who tries not to get tied into the hyper partisanship, It's just, this is our chance to make a positive statement, whatever we believe, and we should do it. And I'm an immigrant, well, son of immigrants, really. And I think for many of us, the fact that we can vote in this country is a great honor and privilege. And I would hope that all of you view it the same and take that responsibility seriously. Ellie, you want to take us home? You're silent.
Ellie, you're on mute.
You know,
I thought we were going to get for a Zoom without saying that. Oh, well. Almost. Doesn't
I
happen.
know. They sent us the #1 comment of the year. You're on mute. And the #2 is, oh my gosh, I forgot my mask. Anyway, I do want to say thank you. What an honor it has been to actually meet you. And thank you so much for taking your time, Ricardo. Thank you. I know you both are extremely busy people. But again, as Chamber of Commerce, it is so important to us that we give all the candidates the opportunity to share who they are and let our community get to know you. So thank you so much. And again, voting is a privilege. Do not overlook that. Get out and vote. So again, thank you so much.
One thing, you have until October 5th to register to vote if you aren't registered for this next election. So, and we do have voter registration forms in our office if you need it.
Awesome. Awesome. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.